Hey, what's going on, everybody? You're watching DualShockers TV on DualShockers.com. We're here at New York City Comic Con. We're going to talk about some Eve comic books, which is kind of new, kind of fresh. I'd like for you to introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah, my name is Torfi Frans. I'm the creative director for IP at Eve. And I've been working on the property for a very long time. Some would say, my wife would say too long, but not me. Since like 1999. Basically, EVE Online is this it's the biggest science fiction MMO out there.
Massive world.
And it's been going on since 2003. We celebrated the decade of EVE this May. And we've been doing expansions every year. We do like a couple of free expansions each year. So we had like our 20th expansion come out this June. But well, perhaps what's unique about EVE is that everybody in EVE plays on the same server. Everybody that participates in EVE, whether they're in Germany or in Russia or in the States or Britain, plays on the same server. So you get over 500,000 people together in the same economy. So you have like this kind of a socio-economic science fiction simulator set 20,000 years in the future, where the narrative is driven heavily by the players themselves. Because our game design philosophy is about building tools and providing people with opportunities and tools to build their own empires. And
destroy them if they want.
Tear them down violently. So what happened, and what we really didn't anticipate when we were designing it at first, that there is this narrative within the game, these amazing player stories that have emerged about corporate espionage, heists, backstabbing, and Ponzi schemes and so on.
Just like real life.
Totally. And people like making their own banks and then running away with the money. Which have become kind of bigger than the game. So when we were starting to think about how we're going to adapt it into comics, when we partnered up with Dark Horse Comics, it was just natural to pick one of these stories to adapt rather than create an original story from scratch.
Which is, in a way, so kind of awesome. It's something that the actual players are creating. A player, it was funny, I called it fan fiction, but you're like, no, it's fan reality, because It's something that they actually did within the game. It exists and it happened.
Exactly. But we didn't have the stories. So when we set out to do the comic, first thing that we did was to build a crowdsourcing website, which is called truestories.eveonline.com. Check it out now, because the stories are still there. And the players then submitted their own stories and discussed them, and debated whether they were true or whether they were lies, and then they could vote them up and down. So we had this nice prioritized list of stories, and of course there was metagaming and politics in that as well. This is EVE, But we have this list of stories now, all tagged with characters and locations, true stories from the game that we are now adapting into different mediums. So we took one of the top stories, is a story about the downfall of Bob, where Bob being Band of Brothers, which was one of the largest alliances in EVE back in 2009. So in February, this story is set in February 2009, where an enemy alliance called Goon Swarm, which is a group of players that came out of the Something Awful forums, kind of through infiltration and deceit, recruited a lieutenant, a high-ranking lieutenant from Band of Brothers, to participate with them in tearing down Band of Brothers from the inside and following up with a lot of spaceship laser shootery.
It's so crazy to me to hear all this and to think it's all happening within a game, and it's just developing as it goes, just real time.
But it's a challenge. Because this story that was submitted by the leader of Goonswarm, a highly controversial character within the EVE community, the Metani, and so he submits the story, so it's told in his words. So that's not going to be the most objective account of the events.
I'm sure he doesn't call himself a bad guy in it at all.
No, it was all done for good. But Daniel Way, the writer of the actual comic, he then took that story and he is dramatizing it and adapting it for the format. And also, he's working with the story a little bit. He's adding some characters, he's adding some drama and fist fights, which didn't happen in the actual.
Make it a little more Hollywood.
Yeah, or a little more comic-y. Right. And the same with the artists. We have 4 brilliant artists that have signed on to the project, and we split the story actually up into 4 parts, and we release it like 2 weeks apart. First one comes out in February, then 2 in March, and 1 in April, free of charge digitally. And then you can buy the printed version that's going to come out in June from Dark Horse. And each of these artists will bring their own personal styles to the comic book. They are not being art directed by us.
Okay.
We give them a Bible and we tell them what the property looks like. We have a fairly authoritarian art dictatorship within EVE development, but we wanted to see how they would express the property. Just like, if you compare Star Wars has been interpreted by a lot of different artists over the years and rediscovered. Like guys like Boba Fett have been made
totally different in many different ways.
Yeah, and cooler in some aspects. Yeah. So I think it's cool to experiment with that and allow them to, give them that freedom.
Now, it's very interesting. We talked a little bit about this. A lot of properties go more from comic book, take all the Marvel IPs to film or to video game. Mm-hmm. You guys are one of the first ones, I would think, that are going from video game to comic book. Well, how's that process work out?
Well, it is a universe, it is a world, and there's a lot of lore that exists, there's a lot of art that exists. We've been building it for over a decade, both now within EVE Online and its sister game Dust 514, and now we're building the third game, Valkyrie, which is a virtual reality game that you play on the Oculus Rift. So we have a great base, kind of foundation to start on, even more than if you would be starting to make a film from scratch. And then, as I mentioned, that we're also doing another book with Dark Horse, which is called EVE Source. And that's kind of at the other end of the spectrum, and that's coming out in March. And that's like a 183-page lore book.
It's a quick read for, anybody.
Yeah. Very dense.
Light bathroom reading.
But you can also just look at the pictures, because it's rich with a lot of original art by our own art team. And that book both fleshes out the backstory and gives you detail about the races and kind of tells about what it's like to grow up on the different planets and what it's like to go to school, in the corporocratic kind of quasi-fascistic state of the Kaldari. There's one story that talks about what it's like to be a monk in a zero-gravity chapel in Amar, orbiting a planet, and vignettes and things like that you don't experience when you're playing the games, but really flesh out the universe.
A lot of the backstory, the universe, and really the essence of EVE, if you will.
Exactly.
Awesome. And now there's another project, I don't know if you want to talk about it, kind of forward-looking beyond the comic. Mm-hmm. What's happening there?
Well, we're going to take these stories further, and we are developing a television series based on the property, and that television series is also an exercise in taking actual player stories and creating drama with them. So that's the idea, and the tagline for it is based on a true story set 20,000 years into the future. But it's in early development. We have a director attached. His name is Baltasar Kormákur. He is an Icelandic director that directed Two Guns with Mark Wahlberg and Denzel Washington, and Contraband prior with Mark Wahlberg. And he's also done a lot of Icelandic films, very dark, very gritty, and just I think he's a great partner to work with because he gets kind of the darkness and the grittiness of the IP.
So not anything very mature still, very much the EVE world and encompassing that.
The EVE world is, the EVE property, the EVE universe is a fairly mature property. The average age of our players is 28 years old, which is much older than your average
standard gamer.
Yeah, standard gamer. It's quite a kind of a cerebral, political, property.
So a lot to look forward to. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're looking forward to a lot of things from EVE and Dust and Dark Horse. A lot of things coming up. Guys, keep your eyes out.
Check it out.
Check it out. We're out.